Welcome to Something More with Chris Boyd. Chris Boyd is a certified financial planner practitioner and senior vice president financial advisor at Wealth Enhancement Group, one of the nation's largest registered investment advisors. We call it Something More because we'd like to talk not only about those important dollar and cents issues, but also the quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Here he is, your fulfillment facilitator, your partner in prosperity, advising clients on Cape Cod and across the country. Here's your host, J. Christopher Boyd.
All right, welcome to another episode of Something More, and I'm here with Jeff Perry as my regular co-host as usual, and we have returning guests with us, so a great episode ahead of us. We're going to talk about the meaning of money in terms of behavioral finance, and to join us in that effort, we have Wendell, Clarke, and Cohen Taylor, both of whom specialize in talking about these issues of behavioral finance and applying it to their clients. Great outcomes, I would say, right? So, guys, thanks for being here again with us. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So we spoke before, and, today we're going to tackle a slightly different topic, but as we sort of get started, maybe just a reintroduction to our audience, a little bit about yourselves and your practice. Cohen, maybe I can have you go first, ladies before gentlemen.
Yes, absolutely. So I am a behavioral wealth specialist. As you mentioned, I have a license in marriage and family therapy, and that becomes relevant because our role is really to help clients understand their overall well-being as it relates to their money, right? We know that money's not just the end-all be-all when it comes to happiness, and so we're looking at kind of the intersection of financial well-being and personal well-being. So having a background in counseling really helps to bring that out in clients and in conversation. Have a lot of experience doing clinical work, but really love the opportunity to be able to step outside that world and apply my skill set in helping clients in this space.
Well, my background is in counseling psychology, and I come from a very eclectic background that has a lot more clinical focus. So I bring that skill set into the same environment. Just like Cohen said, there's a lot of emotional motivators behind our money behaviors and our money habits. So the counseling skill sets not only allows me to address these issues as they present themselves, but to also do a little bit of digging to find out what are the subconscious factors that are contributing to the way that we think about money and therefore the way that we behave with and around money as well.
This is incredibly interesting to me because I think so much we all have this subtle baggage, if you will, that relates to the way we think about money. Is money the root of all evil? Or and the
love of money, Chris. The love of money.
Yeah,
the love of money that is.
Depends on who you ask.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. This
Right.
People carry this at times, this perception of whether they want to really fully embrace an effort to create wealth. Sometimes because of this underlying perceptions and belief systems. So how should we begin, Wendell? Do we want to talk a little bit about this meaning of money for people? How do we dig into that? Do you want to start?
I think that what you just talked about is funny because I was thinking about my start in this wealth journey, and I was doing an assessment, and the assessment talked about my aversion to money. And I was like, I wonder where this came from. And then in doing some of the exercises that we do with clients, Cohen realized that we talked about the love of money and the root of all evil. Growing up in a very Christian household, this is some of the programming that I had heard over and over and over.
Right.
It's much easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for the rich man to enter heaven.
Right.
So when you get this kind of, I would call it conditioning, that's the word we use in psychology, this becomes the meaning that you have of money, right? And then it dictates how you interact with money and how you deal with other people around money. So one of the things that you want to start by doing is understanding the meaning of money for you as a person, right? Like, what does it mean to you? And how does this connect to the emotions that we have? When we understand like it is that the money means to us, we can understand the emotions that we have it, right? Because if you think about it, we need money for our basic needs, right? Shelter, food, clothing, and for safety. Like, this is the basic need that we all have, and we get these things with money. So when we feel like we don't have our basic needs met, there's a threat response that's usually triggered. Okay. So the threat response, usually, everybody knows this, you have a fight or flight type of response. And this generates a feeling of anxiety or fear where money is concerned because you don't have your basic needs met. You really think that I don't have any money, but what you're actually saying is I don't have my needs met, my basic needs being met.
And I imagine we've all been through times when we've experienced that's a lot of stress when you're worried about that kind of insufficiency, right? And where's the money going to come from to pay that bill that's arrived and maybe challenging to get out. Fortunately, I imagine everyone on this call is as financial advisors has gotten past that point at this point in life, but it's one of those things where, having been through that, you can relate to the challenges that people face and the stresses that can really build, and that can be really destructive, right? Before going on to that, I just you talked about faith, and as a Christian, and some of the scripture, that relates to this notion of thinking about the way we think about money, or the way we relate to money. Is this true for a variety of faiths, or is this uniquely a Christian, consideration, I guess, when you have some of the language that comes out of our faith, I guess?
Good stewardship generally is something that is espoused in multiple religions. I've seen the same in Judaism. I've seen it in Islam. I've seen it in Buddhism. I've had the privilege of doing missionary work for 10 years abroad and having interaction with all of these different faiths. Yeah. And one of the things that's consistent is the ideology that having more or having wealth is a blessing, and that wealth, the blessing of that wealth, is for you to do good for other people.
Right. Yeah, nice. Okay, thanks.
Cohen, in addition to faith, where does our fundamental beliefs of what money is come from? Is it, some people, it's power, it's influence, it's freedom.
Sure.
For others, it might be guilt or worry or stress. So where does all this start?
I think another good point to kind of just, bring it back to kind of really that primitive connection that we have with our sense of safety and our physical needs, right? So because money is the way that we achieve these things and that we attain these things, any threat to having less than what we need, or any risk that we perceive that our needs might not be met, whether that's really true or not really true, it can instill the same reaction of panic and fear and anxiety, right? So it really doesn't matter if you have more than enough, less than enough, or just enough means. You are not immune to experiencing those feelings of anxiety and panic as it comes to money.
That's right.
And so, the formative experiences that we have really play a large role in our emotional reaction. So not everyone who is wealthy was always wealthy. And then, actual wealth and perceived wealth are not always, synonymous, right? So when you're thinking about the context in which all of these, meanings that we attach to money are developed, it's also really important to think about how, money is used as a measure of social standing in our society. And so, there's a lot of taboo around talking about it, and many of us were raised to not bring it up, right? Don't bring it up at the dinner table. Money, politics, right? Things that can be extremely divisive and things that can seem intrusive we were raised, to not talk about them. So you have this thing that, we interact with constantly. We need it to, protect our very primal needs, right, of safety. But we also can't talk about it. We can't talk about our feelings associated with it, right? So you can imagine how this is the perfect recipe for, panic, right? Panic, anxiety, fear. And so it's important to take that into context and then think about how, my experiences may be different from my siblings' experiences, even though we grew up in the same family.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Different time in the family experience can. My kids have talked about this, with when the oldest is going through the family life, we're struggling, By the youngest, it's like, well, we're a little more financially secure, and so that's a very different experience, right?
Yeah. And also take into consideration that, like, sometimes within that same family, ideals around money change. So you've had your first child, right? And you were working wherever you were working. And by the time you got to your third or fourth child, you've had promotions or you've got a better job. So the way that your household deals with money can change within that family system, creating a very vastly different experience for your firstborn and the baby of the family.
Yep. And then you grow up and you meet someone and they have a totally different set of experiences, and you can't talk about it. They can't talk about it.
Right.
How are the two of them going to talk about it?
Right. And so, I think that leads us into kind of, how we give money meaning, right? And so we have these core beliefs around money that are formed early on, in early childhood experiences and through financial flashpoints. And oftentimes these beliefs are typically subconscious, right? You don't even know that they're kind of building and the neural pathways are forming around these until, later in life when we actually take the time to explore the meaning behind them. So these are what we call money messages, right? So these things that are, impact how we spend, save, give, and, they kind of just become like these rules of thumb for how we operate around money. But the interesting thing about them is that they're only partial truths. They're not good or bad. And, sometimes they work really well for us and other times they don't. And so it's important to understand, the difference between something that's serving you and something that's not. Just because you've always done something a certain way doesn't mean it's the only way and doesn't mean it's the best way in every situation. And so there's a lot of research that has been done, particularly by Brad and Ted Clance around money messages. They're two financial psychologists, and they talk about how the money messages are also passed down from generation to generation, which is, similar to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the impact that the family has in, nurturing these beliefs, right?
Right.
But also too, there's these experiences that you can have early on. So let's say a parent loses a job, right? Or you had to move many times during your childhood because a parent, got jobs in different areas. Those types of things really, really impact you at a level where, your behavior is going to be shifted around how you make decisions, based on those experiences. Wendell, what would you like to add to that?
I wanted to step back a little bit and talk about flashpoints. So Cohen mentioned financial flashpoints earlier, and I wanted to make sure that our viewers and listeners understand that a flashpoint is something that is a critical event that happens in the past. Okay? So I would give an example. I went to the store and I saw a pair of Air Jordans, right, which were very difficult. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. So growing up in the Caribbean, you can get Nikes, you can get Reeboks, but Air Jordans were like, wow, oh my goodness. So when you look at those and you pick those up and say, Mom, I want these, Mom is like, no, baby, we don't afford those types of things. So saying something like that is a flashpoint because this is a critical moment in the childhood where something happens that informs
formation of identity almost.
So what does that mean? We don't get these, right?
Right. We don't
Right.
get these. That this
Right.
tells you like this is a bar here, or this is a boundary, a financial boundary by which you define yourself. So there are things that you are able to access, and then there are things that you're not able to access. Right. And
Yep.
these are some of these flashpoints along with your childhood experiences with money. They inform things. And that's not the only thing I would talk about. There's a lot of other places and things that inform where we form these money messages. So I think about starting in the home. What do my parents say about money directly? And what do they do that inspires my thoughts about money? Whenever I'm talking to my clients, I generally talk about the plastic bags hidden under the sink. And then everybody begins laughing because generally across all of the cultures and all of the money stations, people realize, yes, we're going to go to Kroger or Walmart and we're going to keep the plastic bags under the sink. We might need them at some point in time in the
Who
future.
knows? Who
We're not
knows?
throwing them out, right?
Yeah. Right.
I say in some cases there are people who like the messaging is the red Solo cups. Wash them. Do not get rid of them, even though they are disposable. So you are communicating messages to your children in the household, or you've had these things communicated to you also. Then there's the community right outside of your household, like when you go to school, when you go to church, right? When you go to the grocery store. A lot of our formative experiences with money were around a store, a grocery store, a convenience store, or something like that.
That's really
What
true.
did we usually buy? What did we stay away from? Did mommy or daddy buy in bulk? Did they buy quality or less? So this dictates how we look at money. Then you have society, the billboards. What are the billboards advertising? What do my radio and my internet and my television tell me about money, right? What type of money should I have? Should I be a high earner? Should I be a low learner? And what type of person is attractive, right? Because everybody wants to be attractive. So is that the person that earns more? Is that the person that earns less? My books and my magazines inform this as well. And then you also have events, right? So in a country where you have like political uprisings, economic change, you have revolutions, and you also have things like, on a more personal level, marriages and divorces, promotions, but you also have like religious change and catastrophe. These are all things that inform your thoughts around these money messages that you have, and they can reinforce them and make them stronger, or they can challenge them and make you think something different.
Yeah, that's right on, Wendell. And I would say 95% of the formation of those thoughts are not told to you. It's not a discussion. It's just coming at you subliminally or however you're perceiving it, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's why I call it conditioning, because for me, the conditioning is happening more often than not and with or without your permission.
Right.
For sure.
Right. I mean, like it could be something as simple as being told to turn off the lights when you leave a room, right? So many people's parents have,
Oh yeah.
told them that, right?
I still do it.
And
I
you
still do it.
right? And so, but the other thing that's interesting too is, things like, turn off the lights or, finish your plate of food. There's kind of a little undertone of a little bit of a scarcity mindset, right? Again, and that doesn't necessarily mean that, we didn't have the means to make sure we covered, the light bill, or that we don't have enough food to, go around and make sure we're nice and well fed. But it comes back to money being connected with, that primal need for safety and behavior. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, leftovers. Thinking about leftovers there.
Yes.
Yeah. And whether food goes to waste or not, right? Yeah. Yeah. This is interesting. I don't know if this is off topic. Was thinking about sometimes how people use money either as a language of love, that they the way they express their care is through financial
Gifts, right?
gifts or means of some kind, or withholding that the power dynamic of money.
Or conditional giving, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that anything you guys want to talk about, or is that outside today's scope?
No, I think it aligns exactly with it, right? It comes back to, the meaning that is tied into, money, right? So whether you were raised because that's what you observed your parents doing, or whether you figured out that that's how you can elicit a response. And, as a parent of a toddler, I understand kind of the bribery that sometimes has to happen, right? But even, as children get older, right, money can sometimes be used as a mechanism to control, to encourage them to get good grades, right? So it can be a reward, but it also can be, as children get older and you're thinking about, inheritance and things of that sort, it can be a way to kind of influence your kids to shape their lives in a direction that you would want, right? And that all comes from, either, your experiences as a parent with money, maybe that's what your parents did for you, right? Or they did something completely different and you are going the opposite direction because you want your children to have a complete different experience.
Right.
And so oftentimes when we're looking at our financial behaviors and we have any kind of inkling that we, want something to turn out differently, we overestimate, we overdo it, right? And we don't always find that balance.
So how often when you're working with clients, do you find that there are these underpinnings that can get in the way sometimes of their developing a successful financial future? Is this something that is a burden sometimes that just is hard to get through, or is it something that you help a client identify, and then it's off to the races? Or just talk a little bit about that. Like, how does this manifest when you're dealing with people in their financial journey, and how you can connect with them in a way that helps them move in a productive way?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm gonna give my experience, because I think Cohen and I sometimes have similar and different experiences. For me, a lot of when I walk into the first introduction with a client, I'm in assessment mode. And that is, what am I seeing here? What is presenting itself here? I listen first before I start talking, because I want to understand who is the person in front of me from the story that they tell me. Okay? It's really good for me to understand what your goals, or we call them priorities, your life priorities are. So if these haven't already been discussed, I'm going to ask questions, diagnostic type questions, to try to understand what are the things that you really want. Everybody comes into the wealth management space saying, I want to grow my money. I want to, invest my money in a way that it'll deliver more. But there's a why behind that. Why? And a lot of times the money is the vehicle to get to the destination of safety and security, or more freedom and independence, right? Or a better future for my children. So when I understand that, then I'm going to start asking some questions about the past, a little bit of what's worked for you before, right? And what do you want? How do you want things to work for you in the future? Because there are several people sometimes that got to the place of bringing their considerable wealth to the firm because they have been very frugal and they've been extremely disciplined, right? And this is something to be celebrated. The problem is there are some risks that you need to take that will align you with the goals that you want to achieve, but you're not the risk-taking person. You're the disciplined person that's not going to move out of this place that you've always functioned before, which is very frugal, right? And very, very, very careful. So if I'm going to connect you with the goals that you say you want, there are going to have to be some behaviors that need to change. But I need to understand the motivation for this, because I can't just get up and say, alakazoo, change, and then suddenly you're changed. But understanding, for example, some of my clients, they grew up in a home with messaging that was save every single penny, because their parents were refugees.
Yes. Right?
Their parents were refugees that came from Europe during the time of the Holocaust, and they lost everything.
Sure.
So because of that, that's a very ingrained money message for them that has dictated their entire life. So now coming to them, I understand what it is that I'm seeing. We're not going to dissuade you from being that way, but we do want you to understand this has helped you to get to this place where you are now. Can it help you get to the place you want to be in the future? And that's really important to understand in the context of what your goals are. So when I know what your goals are, and I know what your behavior or your messages have been, which inform your behavior, then I can ask you if this is going to be helpful and introduce you to an alternative. Because it's not really stop or change, it's the introduction to the alternative to get you to the goal that you desire. How often do I see that? I would say about 50% of the time so far. I've seen that there's something in there that gets in the way. So it's really important to bring awareness to what it is that you actually have as a money message. And for me, as a clinician, Cohen as well, we have our own biases around these types of things. These are our own beliefs about how things should be, right? So being aware of that, I can also look at the money messages of my clients, not impose my own thoughts on their experience and the way that they think, and then bring them to the place that they want to be, right? Not what I think is best.
Right.
Cohen?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the building awareness piece is so important. So just being aware of why you think the way that you think and why you're doing the things that you're doing can be a profoundly transformational experience for clients. And sometimes just that awareness elicits change of like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I thought about things that way. Or I didn't realize I was sending that message to my children by, making sure, telling them to finish all the food on the plate, right? So I think that awareness piece is essential. But then also comes the understanding of your money story, because that not only helps you adjust any financial behaviors that may serve you better, but also when you're communicating with your partner or you're communicating with your children, right? If you understand where you're coming from, you're able to be curious, right, about where they're coming from and communicate about it so that you can have mutual understanding of how your money experiences and how their money experiences are influencing their decisions. So it then becomes a point where, you're building yourselves as a team and you're able to communicate it without saying, I'm right and you're wrong, right? And I think it also is important to think about, because these money messages are not all good and all bad, there is an opportunity to reframe them, right? So if you find that they're not serving you, part of the work, that we do in supporting clients is helping them reframe a message. So for instance, let's say someone has a very strong money message of always save for a rainy day, right? Money should be saved and not spent. It's probably never going to be raining hard enough, right?
Right.
You might talk them through a process of being able to reframe that message to, I can find a balance between the spending on the things that I need and saving, right? So both things can be true. It doesn't have to be this black and white way of thinking. Yeah. And that's what we want to really bring, to the surface when we're talking with clients about this, because those are the things that are going to need to be implemented if ultimately they want to shift their financial behaviors.
I'm smiling because this comes up with Jeff
all the time
in talking with our clients.
Okay.
Where we'll have people who are very frugal and have done a very fine job in
very wealthy at this point,
a financial
very secure
life. And we do a financial plan, and Jeff talks about the idea of giving them permission. A financial plan is not just about, do you have enough? Like, oh, look, you have permission. You have enough that you can do these things. But I think some of this may be, there's more to it underlying it as you're talking about this, but
it feels so silly when someone who has more than ample resources will call and say, I'd like to give $10,000 to my granddaughter or whatever. And
can I?
Can I?
Or not, or they're really unwilling to do some of the things that they really would like to do.
Travel, new cars.
But they are inherently fearful or whatever it is, but that, of the unexpected or what's
fearful
around
of running out.
Yeah.
I would say something to the effect of this. I would say that we think that the scarcity mindset is something that, like, working class people deal with. But Cohen talked before about the actual wealth and perceived wealth not being in alignment. Wealthy people are not insulated from financial anxiety at all. And I would also say that should and must as words are very strong prisons in our subconscious, right? So when it looks ridiculous from the outside, like you said, Jeff, but these are very strong boundaries that people have had reinforced to the point of not wanting to disappoint someone or not wanting to consider themselves a failure, right? So when we get into some of these things, I always make sure to compliment my clients on the work that they have done so far, because this identity that they've taken has gotten them to this point. So it served them. And when you tell them, just change, you're kind of throwing away everything that they've already focused on, right? That got them to this point. So I want them to understand that this mindset has value and purpose, just like anger, anxiety, fear. These all have purpose, right? A lot of these are protective mechanisms, but they don't need to stay all the time. You don't need to stay angry all the time or have fear all the time. When the purpose has been served, let's switch to something else.
Yep.
So the purpose can still be served.
That's good positioning. Yeah.
I'd also add to that, just, letting the client know, again, with this self-awareness piece and then understanding their own money story is, remember, thinking back to, they probably haven't talked much about this, right? About the fact of
very
visceral response.
Yep.
And so being curious as advisors of, kind of where that's coming from and about the money story can help them, one, see that it's okay, that it's not so terrible and something that they don't have to talk about or shouldn't talk about, especially with their financial planner or advisor. But also that, we embrace this part of you. We're not trying to make it completely go away because it served you in many ways. We're just trying to dial it down a little bit. Dial down the intensity, because now you have whatever the amount of money is that you've saved for. And so you don't need to have that level of vigilance that you maybe needed to have at another point in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Good points.
Good thoughts.
I'm struck by the fact that you two have unique skills that you bring to your client relationships. One, how do clients seek you out for this specifically, or is this just an added bonus that you guys have this great skill set to bring to the kind of work you do with your clientele? Is this part of how you identify your ideal client, that there's some of these issues to be navigated and helped through, or is it just the fact that you guys have this background and skill set that it's an extra bonus for the clients you work with, that you're able to help them in this way? Just be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Cohen, you go first.
I would say, excuse me, that is both, actually. I think we have, some prospects that hear about what we do, and so they find us that way. But then we also have clients where, because our approach from the beginning with them is to look at wealth as more than just their money, and to look at really understanding what the meaning of money is for them in order to provide the best guidance for them, right? Because again, we want to be putting our own personal biases aside while we're helping facilitate the client make some financial decisions, right? And so it just kind of really infuses the way that we work with them, because we don't, our advisors and ourselves, we don't focus just on the numbers, right? So you're not going to come to a meeting where we're present and only talk about your money. We're going to talk about how you're doing, how your relationships are, what kind of progress you feel like you made. All of those things are so intertwined, because that's what it's really about. It's really, that's why you want to have wealth, right? Is to be able to, enrich your relationships and the experiences that you have and the experiences of those that you love.
I would add that a lot of people are looking for something more. And I say that specifically, right? Something more, right? So for me, I have my clients.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
but it's true, right? Like
that's right.
As on the nose as I'm being, I think that the landscape of financial management is changing, right? Because you have a plethora of people to go to
Right.
get your money managed, but you want people that look out for your best interests, inclusive of your money, right? When I
Right.
talk to people and they're talking to me about, I really enjoy this, I would like my children to experience this. I would like you to be in the room when I talk to my children about this. What I've experienced is a lot of people that refer the service to family members, either family members that are beneath them or brothers or sisters or an auntie or something, because they're like, wait a minute, I never conceptualized that when I came to deal with my financial assets, that what I was actually thinking about was legacy. What I was actually thinking about was safety and security. What I was actually thinking about was giving myself more freedom and more time to do the things that I love. I never perceived it that way.
Yeah.
You know, so Connie, John, you need to come see this too. So that's what we
Mhm.
see happening. Like the referrals come from people wanting something more.
Nice. Yeah. I like
I
it.
can see
And
that. Yep.
do you guys present yourselves as coaches as well as the like that you're helping people navigate things in a way that's more like sort of like a life coach kind of thing that's multifaceted, not just financial in the way you're talking about things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really more so thought partners, right?
Partner,
And so, you know, we guide, we illuminate, right? We hold up the mirror.
That's a
as-
good
as
word.
before
No,
we
no,
say,
that's a good
Mhm.
word.
you know,
Very true. Yeah.
so that it's more so that than coaching.
Well, I'd be interested in just hearing your thoughts about how do you counsel other financial advisors to incorporate some of these kinds of principles? Because, you know, obviously there's some value in understanding this level of insight. You both have professional experience and skills that you bring to it prior to working in this area of, you know, financial life as well.
Mhm.
Where most of us don't, you know, in the financial services, you know, as a financial advisor, some of it may be intuitive to a degree, right?
Yeah.
But just, I don't know, is there any recommendation you have for financial advisors to think about how do they reach people as it relates to these kind of money messages that underlie some of this stuff and how to better help their clients navigate this?
One of the things that I have told people in discussing, having these more casual discussions is understand the destination, not the vehicle.
Mm,
The money is the vehicle to the destination,
yeah.
right? And you're going to have higher client retention and satisfaction when you understand what is most important to them. Because they walk in the door saying that, you know, the money is important to them, but the money has a purpose. Sometimes the purpose is plainly illuminated, and sometimes the purpose is subverted and hidden.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Develop a relationship with this person to the point that they can tell you the things that have meaning for them. Because when you do that, you understand which car to take. Are we taking the Porsche? Are we taking the Jeep? Right? Which bond and which stock am I taking? Which vehicle am I taking to get to the destination?
Yeah.
Ultimately, the destination is more important than the vehicle, because no one is going to die and on their tombstone is going to have their net worth and how much they beat the S&P 500.
Yeah. If it was a contest, we'd all have lost to, you know, Bill Gates or somebody, I guess. You know.
Wendell, I guess that implies listening more than talking.
Yeah, big time. Big time.
Does that cause you guys to limit how many clients you're willing to work with? Because I imagine that requires more time, energy, you know, that personal connection and really having a depth of understanding. I think that's got to be, in some respects, limiting in terms of how much you can grow.
Well, I mean, I think it's also about, you know, we balance the combination or the split really between meetings with ourselves and the advisor and the clients, and then meetings with just us and the clients, right? So if we were working to reframe a money message, let's say, that wouldn't just happen in, you know, a quick 10-minute conversation, you know, during our, you know, wealth management meeting. It would happen through a couple of, you know, one-on-one meetings with ourselves and the client. And then it's also, you know, people are going through different transitions at different times, right? And so everyone doesn't have the same high level of need at the same time. So we're able to kind of stagger things and meet people where they're at, at the appropriate time. Some clients require one-on-one because something is going on, and others, we're coming to the quarterly meeting and doing it and connecting that way, as well as, keeping in touch and keeping abreast of what's going on in their lives. So we're able to kind of find that balance in terms of.
And do you work with other financial advisors in this process, or do you have the client relationship yourselves? I guess I'm curious.
So we're partnered with other financial advisors in our office. Yes. So it's a team approach. And so, we have, we're sharing notes. Everyone knows what's going on in every meeting, whether we're present or not, right?
Yep.
It's really important when an advisor, reaches out to a client just to check in or calls them back about, a distribution that they're asking about. And then said client brings up, oh, hey, my mother was diagnosed with X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
It's important for us to be able to follow up on that, because that's all going to play into, decisions that are made, and how things are viewed moving forward. Yes. I did want to just jump back to kind of the training of other advisors and what advisors
Yes, please.
become a little bit more well-versed in this space. It starts first with wanting to understand yourself, right? So being curious as an advisor about your money story and your money messages, because once you have that experience of discovery, right, and of building your own self-awareness, one, you're able to see how powerful that is, right, and how helpful that can be in making, and understanding your financial behaviors moving forward, but also having kind of like this framework for decision making of, okay, here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Do I want to stick with the typical behavior because that's what I know and that's what feels comfortable, or do I want to make this other choice over here? So if you experience something yourself, it's easier to then explain it to clients about why it's useful and how it can serve them, right? And so there are, books, there are certification programs. There's a certification in financial therapy that's, largely designed for CFPs to be able to, have some of this knowledge. So there are things out there, but it really does start with the advisor, I think, being curious about their own meaning of money that they make.
It's great to have you here and share some of your insights for our listeners. And let's also give people an opportunity, if they want to learn more and be in touch with you, share a little bit about how they can find you. Cohen, why don't you go first, and Wendell, you can follow up.
Yes. So my email at Wealth Enhancement Group. So it's under my maiden name. It's CDuncan, CDUNCAN, at wealthenhancement.com. That's a great way to reach out. We also have our website through the Wealth Enhancement Group main page. So that is another great way to reach me.
Terrific. And Wendell, anything to add?
Same for me. W. Clarke, CLARKE, because everyone forgets the E, and then they're like, I emailed you, and I'm like, I didn't get it because that's not my name.
Yeah.
At wealthenhancement.com, and you can also, if you don't go to the website, but you happen to run into one of our Atlanta advisors for Wealth Enhancement, they definitely have all of the contact information for all of us. We're the only two behavioral specialists in all of Wealth Enhancement Group. So if ever someone is hunting us down, then you know where to find us in the Atlanta office.
Great.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll see some interest for you as a result of your appearance here. And thank you for taking the time to be with us and sharing your continued insights, in this case about the meaning of money for our clientele and our listeners as well. So great seeing you guys again. And maybe we'll see you at the summit or something soon.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that in mind, until next time, everybody, keep striving for something more.
Thank you for listening to Something More with Chris Boyd. Call us for help, whether it's for financial planning or portfolio management, insurance concerns, or those quality of life issues that make the money matters matter. Whatever's on your mind, visit us at somethingmorewithchrisboyd.com or call us toll free at 866-771-8901. Or send us your questions to amr-info@wealthenhancement.com. You're listening to Something More with Chris Boyd Financial Talk Show. Wealth Enhancement Advisory Services and J. Christopher Boyd provide investment advice on an individual basis to clients only. Proper advice depends on a complete analysis of all facts and circumstances. The information given on this program is general financial comments and cannot be relied upon as pertaining to your specific situation. Wealth Enhancement Group cannot guarantee that using the information from this show will generate profits or ensure freedom from loss. Listeners should consult their own financial advisors or conduct their own due diligence before making any financial decisions.